All right, welcome. I'm going to try reading this book out loud to you from this distance, and we'll see how it goes. We're reading today The Moon Book by Gail Gibbons. This is one of my favorite books about the moon to share with classes, and now that we've moved through Despero in our class, and we've learned a little bit about the moon from our science lesson, we're going to keep reading about the moon, and we're going to do some read-alouds about the moon as well. So this is going to be about that. Here we go. The Moon Book, new and updated. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. When was the last time you saw the moon in the sky? Was it night? You might have seen the moon during the day, too. I was thinking about just the other night as the darkness was clearing up and it was turning into morning. I was coming through the doors of the school and I looked up and I saw the moon. The moon was more of a crescent moon shape, like this. It wasn't very full the other night. I have a feeling right now the moon is in the new moon phase here in the end of October of 2020 because I haven't seen it in a few nights. So let's keep reading. We'll talk more about those ideas that I just discussed. Oh, come on, your book. Oh, phooey. My device is not cooperating at all. This is very silly. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in our night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets, which appear as small points of light. Some planets have many moons. Earth has only one. A star burns gases that give off heat and light. The sun is a star. The moon reflects sunlight. It does not shine like a star. The moon revolves around the Earth. Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to Earth compared to the faraway stars and planets. It's about 283,900 miles away. And for those of you who like the metric system, that is 384,000 kilometers away. That's a long distance. The moon is very far away. But we've learned recently in my class that the sun is much, much, much farther away and much, much bigger. So even though the moon is far, there are things that we can see in the sky that are farther away. The moon is about 23,000 miles in diameter and about 68,000 miles around. Diameter, that's the distance across the moon. So it's about 23,000 miles across, and it's about 6,800 miles around. Excuse me, not 23,000, but 2,300 miles across. The Earth is about 8,000 miles in diameter and about 25,000 miles around. So the Earth is significantly bigger than the moon. The moon is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sun's light. We've learned that. The sunlight's coming from off screen over there, and it hits the moon here. We can also see it hitting the Earth there. It's made up of rock and dust. There is no air, no liquid water, and no sign of life on the moon. Astronomers are scientists who study things in space like planets, the moon, and stars. We can see some astronomers here. And that word comes from astro, which means star, and nomos, which means the law. They study the laws of the stars. So they study the things in space. And we've learned this in our class. An orbit is the path of one object around another. So we'll use that as we read here. Astronomers have discovered that the moon is 4.51 billion years old. Wow. Just slightly younger than the Earth. Something probably collided with Earth and tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around Earth, the rock and debris came together to form the moon. Any guesses what debris might mean in that context, where we have the collision here of something hitting the Earth, and then the debris and the rock spews out and starts to orbit the Earth and clump together to make the moon? Well, debris is kind of like junk or rubble or dust. It's little bits and pieces of something. So the debris from the Earth comes out and then forms the moon. In ancient times, people thought the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called the moon goddess Diana. Nice name. In Greece, the moon goddess was Artemis, who rode through the sky in a silver chariot. Oh, so nice, the moon. Very pretty. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that show on the moon's surface. Some people said the moon showed a man's face. The man in the moon. There he is. He was imprisoned there for stealing. Oh, that's an interesting story. I don't think I've ever heard that about the man in the moon. Others told of moon demons living there. Demons. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around the Earth. And we've learned in our class that a satellite is an object that orbits around a larger one. So we have one natural satellite and many, many thousands of what we would call artificial satellites, satellites that humans have made that also orbit around the Earth. The moon also spins only once as it orbits the Earth. This causes the same side to always face our planet. 1 day on the moon lasts about 28 Earth days because the moon spins so slowly. So one side of the moon is constantly facing the Earth as it goes around. It's like it doesn't want to show us its butt. The moon's butt is always facing away from the Earth. It's always showing us just its face. That's a little body humor for you children. Go away. Get out of here. That's not what I want. There we go. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. Do you know this already? You might already know it from being in my class. The different shapes we see are called phases of the moon. We are seeing different amounts of light being reflected on the moon. How much light we see depends on the positions of the Earth, moon, and sun. So we have the Earth is going around, or the moon is going around the Earth. Notice how in my pictures here, you can see it if I blow it up a little bit, the sun is always shining on half of the moon, but in the different positions, it looks different from Earth. So the amount of sun hitting the moon is never changing. It's always the same. It just looks different depending on where the moon is. So if I'm here and the moon is there, all I can see is the black side of the moon. But if the moon is over here, I can see the full moon. I can see the whole thing. Okay, so the amount of the moon that's lit up is not changing. The position of the moon around the Earth in its orbit is changing. Phases of the moon. During a new moon, the moon is almost directly between the sun and the Earth. The moon looks dark. We see no reflected light. In a few days, a bit of the sun-lit side of the moon is showing. It forms a crescent. The moon is waxing when its surface that we see is getting bigger. The waxing moon is getting bigger. When the moon is a quarter of the way around the Earth, it is its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. So the technical name for this is the first quarter moon. It's not technically called a half moon, but sometimes when we talk about it in regular talk, we'll say half moon. So, and we can actually see here the different places in the orbit that the moons happen. So if the sun's over there, then the new moon is when the moon is between the Earth and the sun. We sing about that in our song. And the crescent moon is when it starts to come around, and the quarter moon is when it's kind of right next to the Earth, looking on it sideways. We'll continue to see these phases as we go. Gibbous moon. When the moon is waxing, it's getting bigger. Between a first quarter moon and a full moon, it's called a gibbous moon. It's called a waxing gibbous moon. The full moon. About 2 weeks have passed since the new moon. Now the entire face of the moon shines. Then we get another gibbous moon. This moon is waning because the lit surface we see is getting smaller. Waxing means it's getting bigger. Waning means getting smaller. When the moon is waning between a full moon and a last quarter moon, it is a gibbous moon once again. So see, there's two gibbous moons. One's waxing, one's waning. One's getting bigger, one's getting smaller. We're going to keep waning here. We're going to keep getting smaller as this page goes. Last quarter moon. When the moon is 3/4 of the way around the Earth, it's in its last quarter phase. Again, we see it as half lit. It's sometimes called a half moon. Once again, we see a small sliver of the moon shining in the sky for the crescent moon, and then it takes the moon about 1 month to go through its entire set of phases. People used to know the time of the month by watching the moon's phases. So a month used to be just one set of phases of the moon. We actually found out that was a little bit too short for the whole year, and so we changed the calendar a little bit. So the moon goes around the sun in 28 days. Usually months are about 30 days because the moon and the Earth's orbit around the sun are not exactly lined up. So that was the first half of the Moon Book by Gail Gibbons. If you'd want to skip ahead to tomorrow's read aloud and finish the book ahead of time, I'll put the link in the notes. Otherwise, you can enjoy listening to that tomorrow. See you guys later.